Well, anyway, 2.1, checking accounts, the first part of our banking services unit. Checking accounts. And I'm not going to write all these terms down. They're already in your book. And look what's happening here. We're color glitching already. I don't know. Anyway, so how many have a checking account here? All of you? Okay. So do you have a checkbook?
No.
Yeah, you probably have one. You probably just don't use it, right?
No, I think
It's becoming a less and less critical thing, but you'll still at some point have to actually write checks to draw money from the checking account. They usually send them to you when you open the account. And then when you use that whole book of checks up, then you order new checks from the
I didn't
bank.
get any of those.
Yeah, I didn't
Well, I
either.
bet your folks have them somewhere knowing that you're never gonna write a check.
Yeah.
Or in that anytime soon. But a lot of that, like to pay certain bills, you have to mail a check in. I mean, these days you can do a lot of it online. You know, like usually like for the Girl Scouts, will write a check, you know, or Mrs. Hefner will write a check for the Girl Scouts for $150. Yeah, don't get me started. Anyway, so there's a bunch of terms in there. Let's chat about some of these things here about regarding checking accounts. So you would probably agree, if you're going to put your money in an account, a checking account would be the most liquid. Remember what liquid means? Yeah, convert to cash very easily at any time with no restrictions, right? Okay, you can go to the ATM and, you know, 10 times a day if you want to pull out money. Now, some of the ATMs will have a dollar limit, so you don't empty the machine all at once, right? But you can go into the teller and withdraw money. And you can write checks, or use a debit card and swipe it, all right? That's the modern version of writing a check, kind of, right? We'll get into what a check is in a little bit here. But then probably your account came with an account register that looks like something I handed you out there, right? With lines for the date and who you wrote a check to or pulled money out for and the amount of the check or deposit, right? And maybe like a running balance for everything you withdraw or deposit, so you can keep track of it, okay? So checking accounts generally are extremely low risk investments, right? It's kind of, right? It's like a no risk, no return investment, think of it that way. And it's no risk, right? Because you remember why the FDIC insurance that all banks have to have, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation? If the bank fails or somebody robs them, you know, you still have access to money, that insurance. It's like when you crash your car, right? The insurance company makes you whole again. They send you money to fix your car, huh? Well, then there's life insurance, all kinds of insurance, right? Okay. So one way to get money out of a checking account is to write a check, a piece of paper. You probably have a checkbook somewhere if you have an account. Ask your folks. And we'll learn how to write an actual check. So you don't have to do it as often these days with the, you know, with the interwebs. Chances are you'll have to at some point. Okay. So now when you write a check, there's two people, right? The payee and the payer. You writing a check for the payer, the person or entity receiving the check is the payee, or paying them some money, right? Now when you write a check, it doesn't immediately come out of your account, right? The check has to clear the bank, okay? So what happens is you write somebody a check, they take it to their bank, cash it, right? The bank gives them money, then their bank sends that check to your bank, wherever it came from, right, to get the money back for that from your account. And you might imagine that takes a little time, especially if you mail a check to somebody. So you got the time in the mail, right, and then the time it takes from one bank to get it to the other, and then the time it takes to process through your bank, right, to the check clearing department, right? And that time between when you write a check and it actually shows up on your account as a debit, like take it out, it's called float. I don't think they had that word in there, but check float. And one thing that some people do is, of course, you have to have enough money in your account, right? If you write a check and you don't have the money in your account, it'll get returned with the NSF stamped on it, non-sufficient funds, right? And that's called bouncing a check. Huh? Well, your account's just empty, right? Or maybe you had $50 in your account and you wrote a check for 60. You know, you just didn't keep that. Oh, I thought I had more, right? Yeah, there's just not enough money for that check. Now, a lot of times, what some businesses will do, if you go to their store and you write a check and it bounces, they don't get paid for it, right? So basically, you just kind of rob them. And what some of them will do is that they'll have these checks with the bank sends back NSF on it with your name and address on it, and they'll have them hanging up around the cash register, the one that bounced the check. So it's kind of like a wall of shame, right? And they should, right? It's like you just stole money from them. You got the items paid for with this piece of paper that said you're good for it, right? And you took the items, but they didn't get their money, right? And I guess to kind of prevent that from happening again, they hang them up for everyone that comes up to the counter. Oh, I know that guy. Yeah, he has to do with money, right? Well, it can be embarrassing. And you guys know what ATMs are, right? The PIN number. I got to use pins for everything. Direct deposit. If you have a job, does anyone have direct deposit set up where they work, right? Almost every place does, right? I don't quite say something like that out. But it used to be like every Friday or something, the manager would come around with a paycheck, paper check. They would write from their account and pay you for your week's worth of work, right? And then you would go and cash that check at your bank. And by the way, if someone writes you a check, if you can, the best thing to do is take that check straight to their bank, right? Let's say you use Vision's Credit Union, right? And so someone has an account at Chemung Canal and writes you a check from their account. So you should go to Chemung Canal and cash that. That way you know right away, right? Because they will look, okay, I got this person's account. This check is no good. You'll know right then instead of waiting several days. The guy's already on the other side of the ocean. Maybe disappear. Okay?
Wait, what happens if that happens?
Well, then you have, it all depends on the situation. Then you have some, maybe you go chew a check to do some work for him, you know, later on in the week. You haven't done the work yet, and the check bounces,
I've done the work,
you're
yeah.
gonna say, I'm not doing the work. Well, if that's the case, I mean, if the amount is high enough and you've already done the work, you know, you can go to court and sue him. You know, it's called a tort liability, right? Sure, right? Yeah, it's really a breach of contract, right? A contract is an agreement for you to do some work for me and for me to pay you, and I made this offer to you, you've accepted it, and that's, you know, as a law contract, right? And if you break that contract, right, or if I break it by not paying you, or bouncing the check, right, then you can. Now, depends on the amount. It costs money to go to court and sue somebody, right? So you might have to lose it, right? Or really, you know, you could call them and talk to them and say, hey, your check bounced. You better get this to me, or I'll never do business with you again, that kind of thing, right? You know, if it's not too big of a but probably not. So, what are the other terms in here that we should chat about? Overdraft protection, right? They talk about insufficient funds or NSF, okay? You can have on your checking account overdraft. So when a check bounces, that's called an overdraft. You've overdrafted your checking account, right? If you have a service set up with the bank, they can cover the amount over, right? Temporarily. It's almost like a little loan they give you, right? So if you're over by $10, they might pull like $50 out of this loan, right? Chunks of 50 to cover that, right? But then of course you got to pay that back, right? And a little bit of interest. But if you don't have that, then the check bounces, and then usually they'll charge you like $30 just for the bounce check fee. So like you wrote a check, and not only, you know, you still owe that money, but then you owe the bank another $30, right? So just immediately take it out of your account. And that's part of the agreement when you open up a checking. It's not like a surprise, right? You get this way, you read agreements when you open accounts, right? Be careful not to do that. Now, most checking accounts don't pay interest. Some do. My bank pays interest on my checking account. It's not much, right? More interest gets paid on a savings account, right? Why would they pay you more for a savings account? You can't, but there's more restrictions on take, right? Like 6 withdrawals per month or something like that instead of 50 a day, you know. So they have access to that money more reliably, so they pay you a little bit more to encourage that. And then other accounts like a certificate of deposit, well, that's tied up for 6 months to a year with no getting it out, right? And so you get a little more interest, and on and on and on.
What bank do you use?
USAA. They're in Texas. Okay. Doesn't make any difference. It's all online. Yeah, they're the best bank on the planet. Yeah, I'll get that. How long, if you ever had the internet go out, does it last more than part of the day?
Yeah, pretty much a little bit.
So whatever, you know. Before the internet, banks were closed on the weekend. That's 2 days. Right? And before ATMs, you know, Saturday and Sunday, couldn't get your money out, right? And by the way, I think there's a federal law that banks are not allowed to be closed for more than 3 days in a row. Why do you think that would be?
Once we a natural disaster.
With exceptions, right? But generally, well, we just talked about being able to access your money, right? And so if a bank decides to close for a week, people are out there for a week, you know, other than ATMs and stuff, right? Not able to get access to their money. Single accounts, joint accounts, you have all that, right? Okay. So again, if you use your debit card, it withdraws from your account almost immediately, right? It goes to its electronic clearinghouse thing, right? But if you write a paper check, there's the check float, okay? So let's look at some examples. Now, also you make deposits, right? When you want to put money into your account, you know, the old-fashioned way is to go to the bank, or the ATM. And has anybody ever done that? You fill something out when you do that? Make a deposit. You know, grandma gives you $100 for your birthday, you want to put it in the bank. There's a deposit slip, right? Well, so if you write your check, right, you can do it in cash, right? You can deposit checks with your phone these days, right?
Yeah.
This is really sweet. But if you want to take cash and put in your account, right, you don't want to mail that, right? Never put cash in the mail. It's lost, right? But if the check gets lost, you can actually cancel the check, right? What do they call the bank? So like, cancel this check. Write another one. What's that? So you fill out a deposit slip, right? And especially if you're running a business, you know, like a Jolly Farmer, they get money all the time. At the end of the day, they got to make a deposit in the bank, and it's a combination of cash in the drawer and people who wrote checks, right? It has to get added, it goes in a bag, and they walk it over to whatever bank they have at the end of every day and make a deposit, but they have to throw out a deposit slip, all right? So that is example one. Mercedes, take a look at example one. This chick is going to make a deposit into her bank. We're on page 68, I think it says. What? 68. Example one. 68. Yeah, 68. 2.1. You might be on 2.2. Okay. Now try it. Yes, please.
Allison currently has a balance of $2,300 on her checking account. She deposits a $425.32 paycheck and $20 rebate check, and a personal check for $550 into her checking account. receive 200 in cash, how much will she have in her account after the transaction?
20 and a personal check for 550. What else does she have there? Okay. Well, she also wants to withdraw, I'll just WD, $200. Okay, and that could be part of your deposit slip as well, right? So they have a deposit slip there, right? We see that? So we're going to fill that thing out. So what's the deposit slip I just handed you for the notes? It says example 1, right? Let's take a look at that. So we're going to put all these numbers, and we're standing in line at the bank, filling out our deposit slip. So let me just do this. See handout. You said you don't get it? Okay, so here's our deposit slip, right? 2-1, example 1. First thing you want to do is put your name on it, right? Allison, Megan, M-E-G-H-A-N. I don't think they gave her address, but you'd put all that here, right? Okay? And then you put today's date. What is today? Today's 5/21/21, right? Okay? And then sign here for cash. So if you're going to receive cash, you need to sign this here, right? But let's go over to the grid here. Okay? Now you notice how they have a row for just cash only, right? Now, a lot of times that cash, sometimes on certain deposit slips will be broken down into, bills and coins, right? But this one's not. So all deposit slips in banks are a little bit different, right? So you might see that vary a little bit from this, but the idea is the same. So she's not depositing any cash in the example that I remember, right? But she has some checks, and you should be listing those individually, right? So she had a check. What was the first amount for her paycheck, right? Was for 425 and 00 cents, right? And I believe there was another, 33, I'm sorry. Have it up there. And 33, right? See how you put the cents in a different column there, right? So what happens is it makes the person that enters all this, the data entry, right? There's almost like no mistaking where what the decimal or what it's supposed to be, kind of thing, right? And there was like another refund check for $20, yeah? So that'll go here. And what was the 550? I forget now. Yeah, but I don't remember what it was for anyway. Okay. And so now we have down here this line that says subtotal. Why is it? It's not a total? Because we might do something else after, right? So subtotal. So add those all up. I think you get, I can't read it. Was it 995.33? 995.33. Okay? So that subtotal is the total of all deposits going on the slip. But she also wants to withdraw $200 from this. Okay? So that goes, you see where it says less cash received? Now, the technical way you should do it is in finance, like an income statement, balance sheets, checkbooks, right? You put negative numbers in parentheses. You'd agree it'd be negative 200 from her account, right? Don't usually use a negative sign. What you do for negatives is either make them red or put them in parentheses, right? So I would do this. Less cash received, 200. Okay? And now you have the bottom line total, okay? So that 995 minus 200 brings us to a total net deposit of 795.33. Okay? And she will have to sign this here. Why? What does that say? Is she receiving cash from this transaction? Yeah, so this, and you will, sign it. My name's not Allison, but you get the idea, right? Okay? So that's the deposit, so not too hard, right? They just break it down, you know, separate checks, and then your cash, in this case, you can have it all up and total at the top, right? You good with that? Okay, let's go over example 2. Well, before that, example 2 is going to deal with a check register, and that's the thing you guys are all claiming you didn't get in your checking account. In the back, the very back of your book of checks is a bunch of stuff that looks like that check register you have in example 2.
I don't even have a couple of checks.
Well, you must have a check register somewhere. Now, these check registers these days, a lot of you can do with electronic software like Quicken or some app on your phone, right? But we're going to learn to do it by hand now, and then we do that, then the other stuff will make sense. So a check register. Oh, I meant to go back here.
I said maybe that's my problem. Because I have an app. I just open my app.
Okay. Well, either way, we need to keep track of stuff, right? So a check register is a record of transactions, and there's only 2 types: withdrawals and deposits, right? It's a record of transactions. Withdrawals and deposits, I'll abbreviate, okay? W/D, down to withdrawal. And a running balance. And running balances. What does that mean? Yeah, like your account has a starting balance, like an opening balance, right? And then you go deposit a check, you add 200 to that balance, and you have a new balance, right, with the $200 after that deposit. And then maybe you write a check for $50, that gets subtracted. And underneath that goes the new balance after the 50 come out, right? So that's a running balance, okay? So it's found on the back of your checkbook or software, right? For a checking account, there's 2 columns, right? For one's going to be withdrawal and the other for deposits. So the withdrawal side are called debits. You ever heard of debits and credits? Okay, none of you took accounting, so, but debits, they're on the left hand, they're always the left, debits are always the left column in anything, right? So debits are withdrawals from your checking account, and credits are always the column on the right, and that would be deposits. Okay? So in anything you're looking at, debits left, credits right. But for a checking account, debits are withdrawals and credits are deposits. Do you think it'd be the same for, let's say, a credit card account? What would a debit be in a credit card account? Wouldn't it all be opposite? It'd still be left and right column, right? But the credit card would be the opposite. So everything debits left, credits right. But for other accounts, it reverses what they are. That makes sense. We'll get to that. Okay. So know what a check register is. Big box here. Okay. Everybody have that? Extend this down. Now let's take a look at example 2 real quick. All right, hey Dylan, read us example 2 there, would you please?
Nick has a checking account with the Park Slope Savings Bank. He writes both paper and electronic checks with EFT. For each transaction, it enters the necessary information. Checker, confirmation number, date, and check connection amount. He uses E to indicate electronic transaction. Determine the balance of each account after the story number for checking.
You know what an EFT is? An EFT is just an electronic funds transfer. What do you think that might be? Would writing a check be an EFT? What would an EFT be then?
Zero chart.
You debit card, right? Something like that, electronic, that kind of thing. You know, or if you're buying something from Amazon, you know, you have your card number in there, and it's electronic debit from your account, okay? And they happen much more quickly, right? The check, the clearing is almost instant within a few minutes, right? Yeah. So EFT. So what we're going to do is we're going to work with his check register. This is what it will kind of look like in the back of your checkbook or in computer software. So let's do the C handout for this example. All right. So the same handout I gave you. Here we go. So here you see, this is his check register on 5/5, May 5th, whatever year, you didn't put the year in. All checks are numbered, right? You have a number on every check, and it's sequential, right? So you wrote check number 3271, that way, you know, you can refer to it later if you have to, there's a problem, right? I guess he got his car repaired to the body shop, he wrote a check for 1721. What do you notice up here, though? What?
That's the amount of cash.
Yeah, that's the book calls it the beginning balance, right? Or opening balance is another term. P. Opening balance. Come on. It's acting up on me again. Okay, that's his opening balance. And so here's our two columns, right? See this left column and the right column? This is our debit column, debits and credits. So debits would be EFTs, swiping the debit card, writing a check, that kind of thing, making a withdrawal at the ATM, okay? So he's got all these things in here already, right? Description, right? There's like another line if you want to add a little more detailed explanation of what it was, okay? So he wrote a check for 1721, and you always want to keep a running balance as you go. That's that far right-hand column, okay? So if he wrote the check for 1721, here's our balance. What are we going to do to that balance? Subtract it, right? So over here, you're going to write negative 1721, right? And then subtract that, and the balance ends up being 1951.27. 1951.27. And so you can see, you know how much you have in your checking account, right? Now, like if he went on his bank's website right after you wrote this check, it'd still be a 3672 balance, right? And so if you're not keeping track of it, here's where you can overdraw your account accidentally, right? If you're not keeping track of it, like you forgot you wrote this check and you go write another one thinking you had $3,600, right? And then something's going to bounce, okay? All right, so a couple days later, he writes a check to Kate's Guitar Hut, bought some strings, $32.50 debit, and it's the same thing, right? So what do we do over here? Minus $32.50. And I always like to kind of line up my ones and tens and hundreds. It makes it more neater and clearer, right? When we subtract that, we keep a running balance of, I think I have 1918.77. Right? Okay, so now the 9th he gets paid. He deposits the paycheck for $821.53. Notice that goes in the other column, right? So that makes it easy to see what's going on in your checkbook, right? You're saying, well, wait, how do I have this much money? Oh, yeah, here's a deposit. I forgot, whatever it was. So what are we going to do over here in the balance column? Now we're going to add plus 821.53. And then get out your calculator, right? You end up with 2740.30. 2740.30. Okay? So then he writes a check to Verizon Wireless. Wow, I wish my Verizon Wireless bill was that low. but it's not. Okay? And so here, by the way, and this is kind of, when you do that, they give you a confirmation. So if there's like, hey, we didn't get your payment. Oh yeah, you gave me that confirmation number. Go look again, right? Okay. So in the debit column, 101.50. So you're getting the idea, right? Minus 101.50. And you just keep going down the line here, and it ends up with what, 26.38.80. I gotta get better glasses or something. 26.38.80. Okay. Then Star Cable, another debit, right? And by the way, did he write a check for this? Is this a check he wrote?
No.
Remember what he did? He puts E for EFT, right? Or you might put card for ATM, or be more specific, right? Something like that. So that way he knows it wasn't a check. If it's a check, you want to definitely write the check number so you know which check it was, right? So now we're going to subtract 138.90. Our little line there. And we have 24.99.90. 499.90. Okay? And these things go on, like if it's in the back of your checkbook, there's several pages of this, you just keep flipping through, right? That kind of thing. No, it's not too hard. I told you it's kind of light duty, right? We're not using the quadratic formula or negative B over 2A thing or distributing or just adding and subtracting. Just adding and subtracting. Okay?
The multiplying by percentage.
So we get that. That's our check register, right? And did I give you the one for the home? I gave you one for the home guide, right? So that'll be, got that for your homework problems. Let's look at the check. Not confusing, the check your understanding, okay? Right after example 2.
Check your
The first one.
understanding.
The first one.
So now we just put the check list of things.
Oh. There's only one under after example.
Let's check understanding and then match the check.
That's what, so I tried to clarify. Not a check, but it's going to be a check too. So that's the thing. The check is about a check. So, oh, my head is spinning. Okay.
So we're gonna check? or-
Yeah, Carly, would you please read the check your understanding follow-up?
Nick writes a check to his friend James Sloan on May 11th for $150.32. What should he write in the check register, and what should his balance be?
So, on that handout, you have a blank check. So here's where you're going to kind of learn how to actually write a check if you need to. I'm not going to dwell for a lot of time on this because it's a thing that is less and less important to do. But you still need to know how to. When somebody writes you a check, you got to know what the hell is looking at, right? Right?
Oh my goodness.
So this is, I think I made that name up, Nick Feinberg, right? I think it's Mr. Feinberg's younger brother. I don't know. And so on a check, right, most of the time from the bank will, on all your checks, have your name and address already filled out up here, right? So you have to put it in there. Sometimes they'll give you some starter checks before your checks get there, and you'll have to write that in until you get yours, right?
I just want to know the whereabouts of the support plate.
It's near West
So you put the date.
Potluck, I don't know. So we put the date, right? Today's, what's,
21.
yeah,
We'll start to do it on May 11th.
okay. Now, this line here is the person or company or store or whoever entity you're writing the check out to.
Wrong date.
Yeah.
Today's the 21st.
Well, it says that's 11.
Oh, dear God.
Oops.
Yeah, we want to stick with the example, I guess. Okay? So who is he writing the check to?
James Sloan.
So that goes here. James Sloan.
Don't need a middle name.
Hmm?
Maybe a middle name.
I didn't mention any of that.
You were not anyone named James Sloan.
And how much is he going to pay Mr. Sloan? So here's what you do. You write the number here, 22? Yeah, 32. Okay? And you also need to write this number out in words down here. Okay?
Oh, geez.
That's
And
what a
then
check
the
is.
cents, 32 divided by.
Right. So what you do is you write 150, right? I'm not gonna write dollars yet, right? So here's what I'm gonna write. 150 and 32 100ths dollars. See how that goes? So you have to know your words for numbers, okay? And then usually what you're really supposed to do is and always do these in pen, by the way. Write your checks. Right? So if you pay me with a check written in pencil, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go grab an eraser and make that where I can fit another zero in here. Okay? You go catch it. So what you want to do, and this is kind of to help avoid fraud, is if you have any space left after there, put a nice line in pen there. That way, like if somebody tries to write something after, say, hey, they won't accept that, that kind of thing. Now this line is optional, right? This is like for, or it might say memo, right? Like what you wrote the check for. What did he write this guy a check for? You buy a guitar? Something like that. This is not, you don't have to have that there, but a lot of times what you'll get is copies of your checks, right? And in your checkbook, a lot of times there's a carbon copy underneath when you write it, and it copies it like that. And then it's, well, why did I write 150 to that clump? Oh yeah, guitar, right? That's more for you. The bank doesn't need to see that. But in order for this check to get paid, it must have your signature on it, right? Come out of your account. That goes over here in the bottom right, right? James, I don't know how to make a
It's supposed to be.
James. Oh, geez. I'm waiting for the guy. Holy cow. Nick Feinberg. I don't know. Nick. How do I make a cursive F? I forgot. Jeez.
I guess. And made the little eyes marks. Would it check out if we put the eyes as marks?
Yes, I would. So what you want your a signature to be is to match your signature, guys. So what you should have is work on really school is a signature that is unique to you. Okay? It's not that hard. It really is. It's scope of things in life that are hard. It's not. But that way, let's say somebody tries to forge one of your checks, they get a hold of your checkbook and they just sign it. And if you have it like a distinct, specific signature, you can say, I didn't sign that check, right? And the bank will have your signature on record, right? Did you have to make a signature? Probably as a youth account, so maybe your parent's signature was the one, right? But when I worked at the bank, every time someone opened an account, they would, on a certain card, they would make their signature, and that card would get filed in with their account. And if there was ever a question, they could pull out, yeah, that signature looks nothing like what you had on file here, right? It's so obviously fraudulent, okay? So have a distinct signature. So that's what a check looks like when you fill it out, okay? Now, on the back of the check, the James Sloan he wrote it to, there's a line on the back for him to sign. If when he signs it, then he can cash it and the money goes to him. Okay? All right, well, I told you it wouldn't be all that crazy here. We're not going to do it. Well, there's no example for you, so definitely not going to do it. Okay?
When I have to buy things with my mom's card,